I paid my parents' bills for years while my brother lived without rent. When he called me, bitter, for mentioning it, I stopped paying and told him it was his turn. For as long as I can remember, I've been the one holding it all together. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, labels that seem flattering until you realize they're just code for the one everyone piles everything on. My parents worked hard when I was younger, and I respected that. They weren't perfect, but they taught me early on that you don't leave things unfinished. I guess that's why I took on so much responsibility without even thinking about it. I didn't mind at first. I'd come home from college on weekends to help out. I'd pay little bills here and there. I'd cook dinner so my mother could rest. And while I was doing all that, my younger brother Mike would float in and out of the house like a guest. Mike was the fun sibling, the one everyone adored. My parents treated him like the golden child, the boy who could do no wrong. He was the kind of guy who never had to ask for help because help would just find him. If he wanted money for something, someone gave it to him. If he wanted food, he showed up with his shoes on, grabbed a plate, and left as soon as he arrived. I don't even know if he ever said thank you. For years I let it go. I was working 2 jobs at one point, and I still stopped by my parents' house to make sure the bills were paid. I didn't want them to worry. I'd clean their kitchen and scrub their bathroom while managing my own place. There were days when I'd come home, collapse on my bed and stare at the ceiling, wondering why it was all falling on me. But still, I kept going. I told myself that someday Mike would step up. That he'd grow out of it. But the years went by and nothing changed. Mike got older, but he didn't grow up. He didn't pay rent. He didn't help with the mortgage. He didn't even offer to pick up a bag of groceries. And I know what you're thinking, why didn't I say something? Why didn't I stop? I think it's because I didn't realize how bitter it was making me. The breaking point didn't come all at once. It was more like a slow burn that built up inside me for years until it finally exploded. It started one Sunday afternoon. I had just finished cleaning my parents' house again. My mom wasn't feeling well, and my dad was too tired to deal with the mess. So, as usual, I swept, mopped, scrubbed, and made dinner while they sat on the couch watching TV. My brother Mike showed up halfway through, grabbed a plate of food, and sat down like a king. He didn't ask me if I needed help. He never did. Eventually he started making jokes about how I was always cleaning. I don't think he even realized how condescending it sounded. He said something like, "You know, you don't have to be so bitter all the time. It's not so hard to take a break." I froze in mid-step, the dish towel still in my hand. "Bitter?" I asked. Mike shrugged, not even looking up from his plate. "Yet you're always running around stressed. Just relax." I don't know what snapped inside me, but something did. I felt this wave of anger, years of swallowed frustration bubbling up all at once. I couldn't hold it back. "Relax?" I said, my voice calm but sharp. "You think I'm bitter because I'm stressed? Do you even know why I'm stressed, Mike? Or do you just not care?" That finally got his attention. He looked at me startled, like he didn't know who I was anymore. "What are you talking about?" he said. I laughed, one of those dry, humorless laughs that comes when you've been holding in too much for too long. "You don't get it, do you? All these years, I've been the one holding it all together. You don't pay the rent. You don't help with the bills. You don't lift a finger to clean up after yourself. You just show up to eat and act like you're doing everyone a favor by being there." His face turned red, but he didn't say anything. My parents were staring at me now, but I didn't care. I was too far gone. "You know what, Mike? I'm done," I said, pointing the tea towel at him like it was a weapon. "If I'm bitter, it's because I've been picking up the slack for you for years. I've been paying your share, cooking your meals, and cleaning up after you while you strut around like you're royalty. Well, guess what? Now it's your turn. I'm not paying another dime, and I'm not lifting another finger. From now on, you're going to pull your weight, and you're going to start with the bills." Mike looked stunned. My dad opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. "Nope. I'm serious. I'm tired. I've done my part and then some. You're a grown man, Mike. Act like it. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what my parents thought, and I didn't care how uncomfortable it made Mike. I was done being the doormat. Mike didn't say anything at first. He just sat there, still holding his fork, staring at me like I'd suddenly grown two heads. I guess he wasn't used to being challenged. My parents were quiet too, as if they didn't know how to react. Finally, Mike muttered, "Fine. I'll help with something if it's that big of a deal." I shook my head. "Not something. Everything. You're going to start paying bills. You're going to clean up after yourself. And no, you're not going to get a pat on the back for doing the bare minimum." My mom finally spoke up, trying to smooth things over. "Honey, don't be so harsh. Mike is just Ash." "Just what, Mom?" I cut her off. "Busy? Tired? He doesn't work half as hard as I do, and I'm still expected to do everything for you and him. It's not fair and you know it." She didn't say anything after that. I didn't want to attack her, but I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. I was mad at Mike, yes, but I was also mad at myself for letting this go on for so long. Mike pushed back his chair and stood up. "Whatever. I don't have to sit here and listen to this." I watched him grab his keys and storm out the door, but for the first time I didn't feel guilty. I felt relieved, like a weight had been lifted. I didn't care if he was angry. He needed to hear it. After he left, my father cleared his throat and looked at me. "You didn't have to yell at him like that." I turned to him and was calm when I spoke. "But I did. Because no one else would. You and Mom have let him act like this for years, and I've been the one paying for it literally. I've been paying bills you don't even know about. Did you know that the electric bill was overdue last month? Or that I paid for Mike's phone plan because he couldn't be bothered?" My parents looked at each other in surprise. "Why didn't you say anything?" my mother asked quietly. "Because I didn't want you to worry. But I can't do it anymore. I'm exhausted." They didn't argue with me after that. I think deep down they knew I was right. I loved them, but their blind spot for Mike had become my burden, and I finally let it go. The next week, I stopped paying the bills that weren't mine. I told Mike very clearly that he needed to pick up where I left off. I didn't care if he had to scrape together his last penny. It was his turn. At first I thought he'd ignore me. But when the calls started coming in about overdue payments and late fees, I think it finally hit him. I wasn't bluffing. And let me tell you, watching Mike squirm was more satisfying than I'd like to admit. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. The first call was about the water bill. Mike texted me and asked if I'd taken care of it yet. I didn't even reply. An hour later he called. "Hey, the water company just called me about a late bill." "What's going on?" "What's going on?" I said calmly. "Is that it's your turn now, Mike? Remember?" There was a pause on the line. "I thought you were kidding about that." "I wasn't. You can't just stop paying. Mom and Dad need water. They can't go without it." "I agree," I said. "So pay the bill." He started sputtering. "You don't get it. I'm not made of money." "Oh, believe me, Mike, I get it. I've been juggling bills for years while you ate your dinner and went on your merry way. Now it's your turn. Figure it out." He hung up, but that wasn't the end of it. I got a call from my mother that night. "Honey, what's wrong with the water bill? Mike said you refused to pay it." "I didn't refuse to pay it, Mom. I just told Mike to take care of it. I don't do everything anymore." She sighed, as if I was being unreasonable. "Honey, you know Mike doesn't have as much money as you do." "And why is that, Mom?" "Because he doesn't work as hard. Because he doesn't save. Because he's never had to worry about it because you let him live like that." "Don't talk about your brother like that," she said sharply. I bit back my frustration. "Mom, I love you. But I'm done. I've paid your bills for years. I've covered Mike's share while he does nothing. I've cooked and cleaned and worked 2 jobs. And you tell me I'm the problem? She didn't have an answer for that. A few days later, Mike relented and paid the water bill after borrowing money from a friend, of course. But it was a start. I wasn't going to make him feel guilty. If he wanted to be treated like an adult, he would act like one. Then came the rent. This time Mike didn't even call. He showed up at my door unannounced, looking disheveled and angry. I let him in, though I wasn't exactly thrilled to see him. "You're really going to make me pay your rent?" he asked, standing in the middle of my living room like this was some kind of intervention. "Yes," I said. "It's not their rent, Mike. It's our parents' rent. And you've been living there, eating their food, contributing nothing. So yeah, it's your turn." He sat down on the couch and put his head in his hands. "I don't have that kind of money, okay? Then get a job that pays better," I said. "Or stop wasting money on stupid things." "I'm not wasting money," he shot back. I raised an eyebrow. "Mike, I know you went to Vegas with your friends last month. I know you bought those sneakers you had to have last week. And I know you spent $100 on takeout this week because you're too lazy to cook." He said nothing. "That's the difference between you and me," I told him. "I sacrifice. I prioritize. You don't." For the first time in years, Mike looked at me and seemed to realize that I wasn't just angry, I was disappointed. Maybe even done with him. "You need to grow up," I said. "Because I'm not your safety net anymore." For a while Mike sulked. He didn't call, didn't text, and didn't show up for dinner at my parents' house. At first I thought, good. Maybe he's finally facing reality. But then my mom started calling me more often. "Mike's struggling," she'd say. "He's stressed out trying to get money for rent. Can't you just help him out this month? Just this once?" I'd heard. Just this once. Too many times to count. I'd done it 100 times and it was never enough. So I stood firm. "Mom, no. If he's struggling, it's time for him to learn how to handle his life. I can't keep saving him." I could tell she wasn't happy with me. She didn't yell, but there was this quiet disapproval in her voice, like I was letting everyone down. And the guilt? Oh, it started to creep in. I'd spent my whole life feeling like it was my job to hold everyone together, and now I was the one letting go. But I refused to give in. A few weeks went by, and I started hearing from mutual friends that Mike was complaining about me. Apparently, I was heartless and bitter for putting all this pressure on him. One of his friends even had the nerve to text me and say, "He's your brother. You should have his back." I wanted to scream. Have his back? I've been carrying him on my back for years. Then, out of nowhere, Mike showed up at my house again. I opened the door, and there he was with a piece of paper in his hand. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept much. "Can I come in?" I let him in. He sat down on my couch and handed me the paper. It was a list: bills, amounts, and deadlines. His handwriting was a mess, but I could see the numbers clearly. "What's this?" I asked. "This is everything I have to pay now," he said. "Rent, utilities, internet, food. It's a lot more than I thought." I looked at him, waiting for what came next. "I didn't realize how much you were covering," he admitted. "I didn't think it was that bad." Part of me wanted to say "I told you so," but I didn't. I just nodded. "It adds up." He leaned back on the couch and let out this long, tired sigh. "I don't know how you did it." "You figure it out," I said. "You stop spending money on stupid things, and you start taking care of what matters. You work harder when you have to. You sacrifice. That's what grown-ups do, Mike." He didn't argue. For the first time, he actually seemed to be listening. "Do you think Mom and Dad know?" he asked quietly. I shrugged. "I don't think they ever thought about it. Because they never had to." Mike was quiet for a minute, and then he said something I wasn't expecting. "I want to fix it. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to try." I didn't say anything at first. I wasn't sure if I believed him. But something about the way he looked tired, humbled, like he'd finally felt the weight I'd been carrying made me think maybe this time was different. I admit, I wasn't completely convinced that Mike would change. I'd heard promises before. I'll do better. I'll help out more. They never amounted to much. But this time, I decided I wasn't going to hold his hand through it. If he was serious, he'd have to prove it himself. The first real test came when the rent was due again. I didn't remind him. I didn't check in. I kept quiet. And then, 2 days before it was due, I got a call from my mom. "Mike just left," she said. "He gave me the rent money." I froze. "Wait, he paid it?" "Yeah. He said he'd been saving up for a few weeks." I didn't know what to say. Mike had never paid a bill in his life without me or someone else nudging him. I figured it would stop there. Maybe he was just trying to shut me up for a while. But then, little by little, other things started to happen. One Saturday I went by my parents' house and the lawn was being mowed. I asked my dad about it, thinking maybe he'd done it, but he said, "Mike came over this morning and took care of it. I didn't even ask him to." The following week I heard from a friend that Mike had been picking up extra shifts at work. He was delivering food in the evenings to make extra money. And then one night he called me. It wasn't a text or a passive-aggressive comment, it was an actual phone call. "Hey," he said. "Just wanted to let you know I paid the electric bill today. I thought you'd be happy to hear that." It took me a second to respond because I wasn't expecting it. "You paid the whole thing?" "Yes. Mom gave me a check for her part, but I covered the rest." "Wow," I said. "That's good, Mike. That's really good." There was a second of silence, and then he said, "I'm trying, okay? I know I've been a failure. I didn't realize how much you did until I had to do it myself." It was strange to hear him say that. For so long I thought Mike was just lazy. And maybe he was. But now I realized that a big part of the problem was that he'd never been asked to step up. Everyone let him skate by because it was easier. I let him go by because I was too afraid of what would happen if I didn't. "You're not a failure," I told him. "You just needed to grow up." He laughed a little, as if he knew how true that was. "Yeah. Well, better late than never, right?" I didn't let my guard down completely. I'd seen Mike start and stop before, so I was still cautious. But for the first time, I felt like maybe things were really changing. The next time I went to my parents' house, Mike was already there, cleaning the kitchen. I stood in the doorway and watched for a minute before he noticed me. "What?" he said, catching my eye. "Nothing," I said. "I just didn't expect to see you scrubbing the counters." He grinned. "Don't get used to it." But I could tell he was a little proud of himself, too. As the months went by, something I didn't expect began to happen. I began to feel lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't running myself into the ground trying to keep everyone afloat. Mike was stepping up, and even though he wasn't perfect, he was trying. That meant everything. I had time to focus on my own life again. It felt weird at first, like I didn't know what to do with myself. I started cooking for fun, not because I had to. I spent weekends in my own apartment, reading or hanging out with friends instead of scrubbing someone else's floors. One night, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off some stuff. When I got there, Mike was in the living room with my dad, helping him set up a streaming service on the TV. My mom was in the kitchen, and it was clean. "Hey, you're here," she said when she saw me. "Sit down, I made dinner." I blinked at her. "You cooked?" She smiled. "Mike helped. He came by earlier and said he'd make sure dinner was ready tonight." I don't think I'd ever heard those words before. I sat down at the table, feeling almost awkward as I watched Mike bring in some dishes and set them down. He caught me staring and gave me a look. "Don't make it weird," he said. I laughed. "I'm just surprised, that's all." We ate together as a family that night, something we hadn't done in a long time. My parents seemed relaxed, and Mike, for once, wasn't just a guest at the table. He was part of it, part of the effort to keep this family going. After dinner, Mike and I ended up on the porch, leaning against the railing as the sun began to set. I wasn't sure he'd bring it up, but he did. "Thanks for kicking my ass," he said quietly. I turned to him. "What?" "You heard me," he said. "If you hadn't kicked my ass that day, I'd still be doing nothing and pretending it was okay. I didn't get it before, but I do now." I didn't say anything right away. I just let it sink in. "I don't regret it," I told him. "It was overdue. I was angry, but I had to be." He nodded. "I deserved it." We stood there for a while in comfortable silence, watching the streetlights flicker on. Standing next to him, I realized I wasn't holding on to the same resentment I'd carried for years. It wasn't just that Mike had changed, it was that I had changed, too. I'd finally drawn a line in the sand, and that made all the difference. "I'm not perfect," Mike finally said, breaking the silence. "But I'm trying to be better. That's all I ever wanted," I told him. And I meant it. Things went well for a while. Mike was holding up his end of the bargain, and for the first time I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe we've turned a corner. And then it all unraveled. It started with a phone call from my mother. "Honey, we need to talk." There was something in her voice, soft but serious, that made my stomach drop. "What's going on?" "It's Mike," she said. He's moving out." I almost dropped my phone. "Moving out? Where's he going?" "Apparently, he's been saving up to move in with some friends across town. He's got an apartment lined up and he's leaving next week." I sat down on the edge of my bed and tried to process what I had heard. "Wait. So he's just leaving? What about you and Dad? What about the bills?" "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," she said quietly. "With Mike leaving, things are going to get tight again. I know you've been focusing on yourself lately, and I hate to ask this, but can you step back in? Just until we figure things out." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All the work, all the yelling, the hard boundaries, the months of Mike finally stepping up, it felt like it was disappearing right before my eyes. He was just walking away. I didn't call Mike right away. I needed to cool off, but my mind was racing. Had he just used this whole thing as a springboard to get out? Was he just trying to be responsible because he knew he needed a security deposit and rent money for his own place? 2 days later, Mike finally texted me. "Hey, can we talk?" I didn't reply. Instead, I showed up at my parents' house. Mike was there, sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone like he didn't care. He looked up as I walked in. "Moving out, huh?" I said, keeping my voice calm. He put his phone down and sighed. "Yeah. I found a place. It's time, you know." "Time for what?" I snapped. "Time to leave Mom and Dad with the bills again? You think they can handle it without you?" Mike looked at me, and for once he didn't argue back. "They can't. I know that. But I can't stay here forever either. You said it yourself, I have to grow up. This is me growing up." I stared at him. "By leaving them?" "No," he said firmly. "I'm not leaving her. I've already made a plan. I'll send them money every month to cover my share. I talked to Mom about it. It won't be as much as I'd like, but it's something. I can't fix everything overnight, okay?" I didn't know what to say. I'd expected him to just walk away, leave her behind like nothing had changed. I hadn't expected him to make a plan. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I asked, my voice softer now. He shrugged. "Because I knew you'd think I was just leaving again. But I'm not. I can't live here forever, and I don't want to be the loser anymore. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to get it right this time." I leaned against the counter, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite put a name to. Part of me was proud of him for trying. Another part of me was exhausted, like I'd been through a war I didn't even want to fight. "What about you?" he asked, breaking the silence. "What about me? You always worry about everyone else. Maybe it's time you did something for yourself." I didn't answer. I just looked at him and nodded. A week later, Mike moved out. He texted me the following month to let me know he'd sent my parents money for the rent. He wasn't perfect, but for once he kept his word. As for me, I didn't move back in. Not this time. I loved my parents, but I'd sacrificed myself for too many years, and I couldn't go back to that. A few months later, I found a new job, one that paid better and gave me the freedom to move out of my tiny apartment and into a place I loved. And for the first time in my life, I let go of the idea that I was responsible for cleaning up everyone else's mess. Mike was right about one thing: I had to live for myself, too,